My husband told me he'd rather sleep with my best friend than me, so I told him she liked him back, set up a double date, and saw her husband hit her on the nose when he tried to flirt with her. To set the scene before I talk about what happened, my best friend's husband met her at work. The three of us went to high school together. We got married 3 years ago after being together for 2 years. My husband, Ethan, is 28 years old, and I am 28 years old. Sarah is my best friend. We've been friends since kindergarten, and she is 28 years old. We're still good friends after a long time. They were together for about 3 years before they got married to James, who is 30 years old. During high school, Sarah, I, and Ethan were not friends, but we knew each other. We only became friends at our high school reunion a few years after we graduated. That's where Ethan and I met. Sarah wasn't able to go because she was sick. He asked me on a few dates, and we found that we had a lot more in common than we thought. It's how we met and got together, and we were pretty happy. We were also happy in our marriage, and Sarah and James had joined us on a few double dates. Things were going great until about a week ago, when my husband and I had a night in and drank the whole bottle of wine to celebrate having a busy week. We decided to play that game, where we had to name 5 people that we could hook up with without getting our partner mad. I got 5 names right, but he only got 4 right. I was making fun of him by telling him he had to name 5, or I would win this one. Of course, there was no winner or loser in this game. I was just teasing him. But after giving it some thought, he said that he'd love to hook up with Sarah sometime if he knew I wouldn't get mad. At the time, I was shocked and didn't know what to say. He was laughing too, so I tried to laugh it off. Even though I was very drunk, I couldn't find anything funny about what he said, and couldn't just laugh it off. I asked him if he was serious and told him he could only name famous people because we probably would never meet them, and it would be weird if he named real people. I knew he was serious when he told me he had a crush on Sarah since we were back in high school. He didn't even think about whether he should have stopped there. He went on to say that he used to see me as her less attractive partner. I couldn't help but stare at him blankly because what he was saying was so rude and mean. He went on and on about how much he'd love to spend a day with a woman like Sarah and how lucky James is. I guess he had forgotten that I was his wife. That night, I had enough, so I quietly left the room, went to my bedroom, and fell asleep. I quickly fell asleep, hoping that all of this would be forgotten in the morning. I was very angry and drunk at the same time, but I didn't forget, and at breakfast the next morning, I chose to talk to Ethan about what he had said the night before. Even though I had a terrible hangover from last night, he didn't seem too bothered by it. He told me everything he said about Sarah last night was true, and didn't even seem sorry about it when I asked him if he meant it. He wasn't even ashamed to say it, he just kept eating his cereal. I was mad that this guy was supposed to be my husband, but didn't feel bad about telling my best friend that he thought she was more attractive. I asked him right away if he still thought Sarah was pretty, and he told me right away that he did. That was it for me. I yelled at him because of it, but he didn't say sorry. Instead, he said what he was saying again and told me I should just accept it and move on. Even though he loved me more than Sarah and thought I was his partner, he still thought Sarah was more beautiful than me, and would choose her over me any time if it came down to looks. What's more normal than your husband telling you that if it came down to it, he'd rather sleep with your best friend than you? That's what he thought I would think. After telling me I was being childish and petty, he left for work after we had a really bad fight. He told me that he wouldn't lie to me, and that if he didn't think I was as beautiful as Sarah, he wouldn't put it in just to make me feel better about myself. He even tried to trick me by telling me that I shouldn't have brought up that stupid game the other night if I didn't want an honest answer, and that I should have just let it go when he couldn't name 5 people instead of making fun of him about it, as if I were the one who was wrong. There was no way I was going to work that day. I kept crying all day. Funny enough, I couldn't talk to my husband or my best friend about this, even though they are the only 2 people I usually tell everything to. So I didn't say anything and tried to act like everything was okay when Ethan got home. After the fight, and for the next 2 days, we didn't talk because he was sure he hadn't done anything wrong and was just being honest. There came a 3rd day when I finally lost it and told Sarah everything. She thought something was wrong with me because I was acting and sounding upset, So for 2 days, she asked me over and over if I was okay, and was generally worried about me. I gave in and told her the truth because I couldn't take it any longer. She was mad at Ethan for me and was about to call him to tell him what she thought, but I stopped her. I certainly didn't know what to do, and I didn't want her to talk to him just yet because I wasn't ready. That being said, Sarah pushed me to see how wrong Ethan's words were, and that I needed to teach him a lesson, and then leave this marriage because it was clear he didn't respect me at all. I knew she was right, but I didn't know how to teach him a lesson. The only time I realized I could do that was when Sarah said she wished Ethan had said something like that while James was around. That would have been cool because James had beaten up a guy who tried to catcall Sarah before. If it was okay with her, I asked her if I could set up a double date for them in a few days and have Ethan tell James about it. We laughed a lot as we thought about what would have happened to Ethan if he had said something like that on the date. At that point, the hurt was gone and anger had taken its place, so I decided to go through with my plan. I even told Ethan I was sorry for exaggerating, even though I hadn't meant to. I only asked him to agree to the double date. I made it up to him by making him his favorite dinner. He then had the nerve to tell me he was glad I finally understood and agreed to the date. Sarah and I had already made a risky plan, and I made things worse by lying to my husband the day before the date, telling him that Sarah had told me that she had a crush on him for a long time and would love to go on a date with him someday. I told him that this was true, so he should probably bring it up on the date. He looked shocked and asked James if it was okay. I lied and said it was fine because it was just a date. Thomas didn't mind. He seemed really happy about that and was beaming with pride when I told him, which made me feel a lot less guilty. Yesterday evening, we finally went on the date. Sarah and I chose one of the best places in the city. Everything was dressed up, and today was going to be great for everyone. Sarah and I were excited because Ethan was finally going to get spanked, which we thought he needed very badly. After some small talk and a few glasses of wine, I finally brought up the game we were playing the day before to get the conversation going in the direction we wanted it to go. I named 5 famous people again, and then I asked Ethan to go. Since what he had learned the day before made him think that Sarah felt the same way about him, and James didn't care, he was sure enough to name Sarah without being asked. That was too bad. Neither of those things were true. When he called her Sarah, she claimed to be shocked, and so did I. We threw him under the bus, and James was already very angry when I looked at him. It was scary because he's pretty buff, but Ethan didn't seem to mind and kept smiling at Sarah. James first talked about it and told him that he needed to apologize to everyone at the table. After that, we would end this double date. Ethan had a chance to read the room and do the right thing, but as usual, he did the opposite and believed my lies, even though James and Sarah were angry and shocked, which was proof that they were not true. But he chose to answer back by saying he wasn't going to say sorry because he knew she felt the same way. Now that everything was out in the open, he even went one step further and said that he and Sarah didn't have to hide how they felt about each other and act like there was no stress, because James and I couldn't do anything. Unfortunately, James could do a lot of things, and when he got mad, he grabbed Ethan by the collar from across the table and lifted him up. And before we could do anything, there was a loud thump. I only remember Ethan being knocked down, and then the restaurant staff let us all out. We were lucky that no one called the police because the restaurant didn't want to get bad news. Afterward, there was a lot of blood, and as far as I know, Ethan had a broken nose. He still had the nerve to keep fighting outside the restaurant. By that time, he knew that Sarah and I were only up to this to embarrass him and was calling us cowards to make fun of us. He only left when James told him that one more word from him would put him in the hospital for a few days. I didn't go home after that. Instead, I went to a nearby hotel. They dropped me off, and we told James everything while we were in the car. We were worried that he would be mad that we hadn't told him about our plan ahead of time. But he told us that he was glad we hadn't because he doesn't like getting into fights unless they're really important. But he told us Ethan earned it and that he didn't feel bad about it at all. He dropped me off, and since we couldn't eat at the place, they went home after dinner. About 2 hours later, right before I was about to pass out, Ethan texted me to say that I was a bad person for what I did. He was upset that he had to go to the emergency room by himself because he broke his nose and had to get surgery to fix it. He told me that getting into a fight with him just to get back at him for saying that he thought Sarah was pretty was disgusting and that he wanted a divorce right away. According to him, what I did was wrong, and he thought it was crazy and childish of me to plan to have a guy twice his size beat him up. I felt bad that he had to go to the emergency room by himself because I know that blood and hospitals scare him. I didn't answer his text last night because I was so tired I couldn't even think about anything else. I quickly went to sleep. I still felt good about seeing Ethan get punched, so I didn't think I did anything wrong. Still, I understand that what I did was definitely not a good idea now that I'm awake and sober. He was right. Sarah and I were acting like kids when we planned to hurt him, only to see him look like a fool and then get punched in the face. I believe we did something too much like we were in high school. I'm no longer happy about it, but I'm also not sure if he was in the right here. He did say a lot of things that were not cool. During the time we were there, he not only told her husband and his own wife that he thinks Sarah is hot, but he also tried to get with her. I know that he only said those things because I told him that Sarah liked him back, but it was still crazy because it meant that he had always felt that way about her. I still remember that he called me her less beautiful sidekick. It must be painful to hear that from your own husband. Even though we're no longer married, I'm not sure if I need to say sorry for what I did. What he said last night made it sound like he earned it, even though I think what I did was small and a bit much. That's why Aita lied to my husband and let him hit on my best friend, so her husband would beat him up. In the first update, I did read the comments on my first post. That much is clear. I made a huge mistake. I know that's true because most of you said it. I thought what my husband said was disgusting, but what Sarah and I did was even worse. We didn't even think about how James felt. Instead, we used him and his anger to make Ethan look bad and hurt him. We were actually counting on him losing it, even though we knew he would have to work hard to keep it in check. We made a joke out of it, which was very, very rude of us. Maybe I was being mean because I didn't really think about it, and neither did Sarah. I feel bad about what we did now that I have a clear head, and Sarah does too. Anyway, we really do believe we need to say sorry to Ethan because he was hurt, and as many of you said, he might even file charges or something. That doesn't mean it won't happen even though it hasn't in 3 days. To be safe, Sarah and I are going to tell him we're sorry, but I'm still leaving him. I know this is the right thing to do, even though it will be hard. Naturally, we're also going to say sorry to James. We know that we took advantage of his weakness without permission, and I also think I gave him a bad name here. He's really not a bad guy. He's just been having a bad time with his anger, but he's still going to therapy to deal with it, and a lot has changed since he was a teen offender. As much as possible, he tries not to get angry. He would never hurt a fly unless it was a threat to him. He even gave Ethan a chance to say sorry, but he only got mad when he didn't. Ethan then kept bothering his wife, and to be fair, I think anyone would have lost it by then. He also hit a guy for catcalling Sarah, but Sarah was telling me about an event from a few years ago, when they were just dating, and he had just given the guy a black eye. He wouldn't hurt someone who doesn't really deserve it, as I said. I'm not in favor of violence in general, but there are times when words just won't do. Hi everyone, this is Update 2. Sarah and I tried to say sorry to Ethan today, but he didn't take it well. I went home with her to get my things and get some new clothes to wear at the hotel. After letting me in, he looked very upset and didn't say a word to either of us the whole time we were there. They were still on his nose, and I felt bad about leaving them on because I could tell he was in a lot of pain. While we packed, there was quiet. Just as we were about to leave, I decided to say sorry. I told him I was sorry for being so mean and tricking him, and I thought he would also say sorry to Sarah and me for all the silly things he said. He didn't say that, though. Instead, he told me to leave and that he wasn't interested in our sorry, that the damage was already done. He told us that we should be thankful that he hadn't brought charges against James, and that we should both feel lucky that he was even interested in us, because we weren't even close to the women he'd been with before us. That was a little strange, but we were too shocked to say anything. He kept going on and on about how he'd given us both a chance, but we'd both blown it. He said that our sorry didn't matter, because he wasn't going to take me back or go out with Sarah anymore, no matter what we said. I told him that we weren't here to ask for a second chance to be with him, and that he was crazy to think that was what the apology was for, but he slammed the door in our faces. So I guess it was our mistake to think that he would have suddenly become a good person. It's clear that didn't happen, and I'm not shocked. He would talk about his hot coworkers or cute women he met all the time, even when we were dating and while we were married. I never paid much attention because he wasn't doing anything about it. So there's no harm, no foul. Because I felt safe with him, I thought he told me everything about his relationships with other women. But it turned out it had nothing to do with me and everything to do with his pride. He thought he was God's gift to the world and wanted me to be thankful that he was married to me, even though he seems to think he has a million other options. But Sarah and I did the right thing and told him we were sorry for what we did. He's in over his head, though, so we can't help him if he doesn't accept our apology. The talk we had with James went much better, and he even told us we didn't need to say sorry because he would happily hit any other rude guy the same way because that's how they learn. He even said that he'd be happy to teach his son how to respect his wife and other women if his parents couldn't. I thought that was pretty cool of him. Regardless, we told him we were sorry for taking advantage of him and trying to get him angry for our own amusement, and he agreed. That was it. No more trouble. Okay, that's it. Now I just need to find a lawyer to help me with the divorce. I'm not sure how I feel about any of this, but I know that my friends and family will help me get through it. Meeting him during the divorce process will be a pain, but I guess I'll be okay. 3. Hi. I asked for a divorce a few days ago, and Ethan was served yesterday. He texted me this morning to say that he knew I would regret this, but since I had already filed for divorce, he wasn't going to stop me. I wasn't living in an apartment yet, so I was still staying in a hotel. He told me to go back and get everything else that belonged to me, like the picture albums, trinkets, and other random things I owned but didn't bring with me. He told me to finish by the end of the week, or he would either donate it to charity or throw it away. I talked to Sarah about it and will be staying with her temporarily. She's been nice enough to let me store all my things in her storage room until I can find a place of my own. I swear I'm so thankful for her. That's right. Ethan has been shaming me in front of all of our mutual friends. He doesn't understand that he looks like a complete jerk because he slept with his wife's best friend and then got beat up by her husband. Because of his story, most people have told me I'm doing the right thing and wished me luck. He's literally doing me a favor right now. His rudeness and low-class behavior don't bother me anymore because I know he's a loser, and I'm better than him anyway.